used to be a commercial. Inquiring minds want to know. I think so. I don't want to be overly simplistic, but this is like the kid who really does okay in Little League and makes the high school team. And age 13, 14, 15, 16, said, you know what? I'm playing for the New York Yankees. So you have a friend who actually confirms that when he was 16 years old,
Bob
Arnold.
At that point, I was like probably 19 years old. We were privates in the military.
The privates in the military, the lowest rank in the military. And Bob Arnold, the kid from this functional family, which could easily have been dysfunctional, with a dad who really took him under his wing and was a positive role model in his life, says to his buddy, I'm going to go to Harvard Law School. I'm going to graduate from Harvard Law School. And you did.
Yeah, that's the story Tom will tell you. I don't remember telling
how many schools did you apply to?
So when I was in college, I had a counselor who had gone to law school, a guy who was and his wife. They were both, I don't remember if they were just administrators or if they were actually professors, but they sort of, when I started the process, they sort of took me under their wing. And this guy was like, well, okay, so this is what you have to do. This is how you're going to do it. And these are the schools that you're going to apply to. I remember saying to him, well, even the application fee is so expensive. I don't know if I'm going to pay for all those application fees. And he goes, look, no, you just write to these people, tell them it's a hardship. You don't pay for the application fee and you apply. So, I mean, I would say he was very influential in determining where I thought I might go to law school. Believe it or not, my first choice for law school was NYU. And the reason was my grandparents lived in Harlem, and I loved visiting them, and I loved the city. And John Kennedy Jr. was a student there at the time. I thought, totally hip, totally cool. Yeah. So that was my first choice.
And Greenwich Village is nice to hang out in.
And I have an aunt. I had an aunt who lived in Greenwich Village. So my second choice was Stanford for a bunch of different reasons, but I actually visited that campus, and it was so brown and dry. I guess they had been going through a drought, and I was like, well, I don't even want to consider this. I can't live here. And then, so my third choice kind of was Harvard. But it became my first choice when I flew into New York to interview at NYU for the scholarship that they had. And my grandfather picked me up at LaGuardia Airport, and my grandfather says, in his way, in the way that they can influence you. My grandfather we're in the car, he looks at me and he says, well, NYU is nice, but you'll take Harvard if you get it right. And that was it. I mean, basically he was telling me, you're going to Harvard.
What was your grandfather's academic background?
He didn't have, my grandfather's a wonderful man. He didn't have much of an academic background. He worked in the shipyards in New Jersey, like Bayonne, New Jersey or something like that. And he had worked his way up to supervisor. He had become I love my grandfather. He was a wonderful man. He had become sort of angry, bitter about his life in that he always felt like there was a glass ceiling, like he could not advance beyond a certain level. He felt like he was even training his supervisors to take his place, and that was just a constant stream. He was never eligible himself for a promotion, and he had to train the people that he would later report to constantly. My grandfather was a wonderful man.
But counselor, what do you lawyers say? De jure and de facto stories of oppression of African American students who felt less than, Latinx women who say that macho teachers marginalized them. They always felt less than their white or even their male Latin cohorts in school. So were your grandfather's feelings ever reflected by you in this process and the applications? I mean, in the military or beyond, did you ever feel that you had to work double hard?
No, you know what? And maybe it's like maybe I've suffered because I've taken some things for granted because I've always because in the military is a very mixed society. It's a little bubble, and there are people from all sorts of backgrounds, even from international backgrounds, because the United States military works with so many different countries around the world. I always felt very, very comfortable and even competitive. I mean, when you work with people and you perform. I was when I was enlisted, I was the honor graduate of every school I ever went to. Um, and I I don't want to make this a commercial for the military, but I just felt like there's no question I can do this. I was good intellectually, I was good athletically, I was good. There's no question I can do this. I never felt like I had the limits that my grandfather felt like he had.
Let's do the checklist. I mean, because unbeknownst to you, you've hit on tremendous things going back to a famous industrial psychologist named Maslow after World War II, who fled Nazi Germany.
His hierarchy of needs.
Right, and dealing with the life of a refugee from Nazi Germany. He died at a fairly young age. But, he said, yeah, money enters into it, but your self aspiration, your goals, and who you're going to be sometimes is based on a lot of things that are not just money. They're also about how you want to be perceived by other people. So the three categories. First one, influence to go to graduate school by your peers or social media. This was already resolved when you were 18 or 19. You didn't need any special motivation from friends or media, right?
Yeah, I would say that was resolved when I was 16.
And then the next thing deals with supposedly extremely important variables about any members of your family or an extended family who went to college or graduate school and talk to you about it all the time. You were the first and perhaps the only one in your immediate family or extended family to go to college, let alone graduate school.
Correct. And you know what? I mean, in some ways, I think that was a blessing in a way because I never had pressure to be certain thing, anything. It was never you're going to do this or family business, whatever it might be. I never had any pressure to be something that somebody wanted me to be.
And if
I
you're
was,
ba-
I was free to choose or create.
if you bear with our preliminary findings for a moment, and it's of painful concern to people today. And this is not pejorative or meant to put down any of the folks who might be viewing, but for sure, that counselor who helped you fill out the forms, the college advisors and counselors have a role. Excuse me. The recruiters from graduate schools or an MBA program who come to your school and they recruit you and they have a career fair, they have a role. But very few people have gone to Bob Arnold and other people said, what influenced you? Aside from the external recruiting and whatever, what were the things, the sparks that hit you? And the third and most important variable in the world today, particularly for historically marginalized communities, what do you think that third variable is?
I
And you mentioned it in passing so that we know it did not involve you personally.
I would say, and I don't know if this is correct, but I would say ambition to be something other than what I guess you might traditionally be perceived to be.
Absolutely, possibly, partially incorrect. Yes, but fold it into what has become, actually given a name, the no loan movement, where they're making this decision to apply to nursing school, the MBA, architectural school, to get a master's degree, to teach and become a principal, whatever, whether I'm going to put myself in debt for the rest of my life with my family and perhaps my kids and my relationships, when I weigh all the variables, or just go into my dad's air conditioning business, or go to Teach America, the complicated burden of the financial variable for anyone, but particularly by people who feel challenged to start with or pressed to start with, and because of the GI Bill and your military experience, Bob Arnold, it was tough enough to apply and decide how you're going to get in. But you, from what you're telling us, never had that financial burden on your head when you made the decision.
Well, I mean, because the other decisions that I made, I joined the military specifically to pay for my college, so college was never an issue. Going to the law school that I went to, or going to any law school, I thought you would make enough money to pay for student loans. That's what you're told anyway. So that was never, I never like thought about, having a financial burden that was so burdensome that I couldn't manage it.
But you never were concerned that if you decided medical school or an MBA or architectural school or whatever, or law school, that the financial burden would be the barrier. And we call them enablers. Your grandfather's comment to you, it's interesting academically and quantitatively. When we look at a comment from your grandfather picking you up at LaGuardia Field, and he was a longshoreman or whatever, you say, well, if you got into Harvard, you'd probably do it. From someone you love and you trust, he becomes not in a pejorative, he becomes a good enabler, whereas other people will say, hey, $200,000 in student loans to go to medical school, that becomes a barrier. So would you encourage people who are recent graduates with a bachelor's degree to try to look for ways of minimizing that financial burden?
I would, however, let me say this about the situation that we find ourselves in nowadays. I'm no expert on the financial pressure that exists nowadays on someone who potentially wants to go to graduate school. I can only speak of the expertise of my own personal experience. And my experience was I knew that it would be an important consideration, of paying for these things. How are you going to pay for it? And I developed a plan to do that. So that I never felt any financial pressure on deciding where I wanted to go to school or what I wanted to do or become. Nowadays, you know, I read the stories anecdotally as well in the newspaper and everything else, how much the cost of tuition has increased and how much of a financial burden it is for people. To go and get these degrees, and people graduate with this crazy amount of debt. If I had been in that situation myself, I don't know what I would have done, but I did not put myself in that position. Would I encourage someone to do that nowadays? That's really an individual call because not only did I go through a certain experience myself, but I also see others who are saddled with this debt, and I see the impact that it has. So it's not that's not really a question that I can answer from my own personal experience. I think I can counsel people, but each individual has to you know sort of make up their own mind based on their ability and prospects.
Two more items, and I appreciate you giving of your time and generous not only in terms of your time, but also in terms of the candid way that you're sharing with us. And you and I have known each other for a while. And I get great strength in hearing your story and watching you interact with kids in your scholarship programs. And we won't necessarily get into the community work that you do. But reflect back for a moment on Japan and on Texas and Germany and St. Louis and college and fill in the blank. I would say the one spark which motivated me for college and beyond was.
I, I don't know that there is one spark. Um, I really don't know that I woke up one day and just I'm serious. I don't think there is. Do people need that? Do people do you
I don't know if people need it, but in the narrative that you shared with us a few minutes ago, and this
You
is
know, I,
something.
I think of the kid getting sand kicked in his face at the beach, and all of a sudden he becomes a bodybuilder. I never got sand kicked in my face that motivated me to want to go to law school.
Well, that's the pejorative bullying reaction. But maybe it's an advantage of not doing a Zoom meeting, and we're here at the studio at Lynn University in Florida. But in watching you a few minutes ago, You conveyed a spark. And the spark was when Bob Arnold, attorney, thinking back many, many years, talking about his undergraduate days, was saying, those are great times. I really enjoy. You had some passion. You enjoyed the undergraduate experience. It engulfed you in something that
But
made you
Mark,
feel terrific. You
no,
acted
no,
like that was
no,
a
no.
great time of your life.
It was, but I had before that I'd already decided that I was going to go to law school. I decided when I was 16 years old, when I could not be a Marine Corps fighter pilot, that I was going to go to law school. So the college experience came after that.
But not every kid who goes to college enjoys it. Some they drop out in their freshman year.
No,
I mean, there have to
no.
be things that maybe it was the movie. You know, you couldn't be a fighter pilot unless you had a degree, right?
Yeah, unless you went to Annapolis.
That's not
Yeah.
okay. Let's move forward. The final question is open ended to you. This is our open sourcing, and they're going to give you your own personal camera right over here.
Where is the camera button?
Your own personal camera over here. It's working.
I wasn't
Okay.
looking. I
Ladies and gentlemen, you know, our favorite lawyer, at least today, give us any additional things if you're now speaking to the senior class at XYZ University in terms of career decisions and people, particularly people who are facing those big financial burdens. Give them your message about graduate school or professional school.
College senior.
You're speaking to college. They're going to be graduating in a few months, and some of them have thought about it. Some of them just want to graduate. And you said before that you don't know how you would personally make the financial decisions if they were burdensome. So take all of this and synthesize your personal message to student X.
My personal message would be, and I don't know if this is the answer that you want to hear.
I don't want to hear any answers. I want to hear synthesized answers from lots of people.
Okay. So, if you do not know already something that you are passionate about, that you cannot live without, and I don't mean just to check a box on a sheet of paper to say that you are X, you accomplished X, you did X, but something that you really, really enjoy and love. If you don't know what that thing is at that point in time, graduate school can be a couple of different things. It can be, for a lot of people, it is a way to stall that decision. You don't have to make that decision because you're in school and you're still like living life and enjoying it and, you know, experiencing the things that go along with it. Okay. However, if you're going to acquire an immense burden in, a large debt load, I don't know that I would recommend that as a way to go. And if you're still trying to figure out what works for you, because the world has changed so much, and other cultures do things differently than we do, that, and we can learn from what they do. I would say that it's not a bad idea. There's no rush. Like if you're 23, 24, 25, whatever, there's no rush. You're probably going to live to be 80 years old. You're not in a hurry to get a graduate degree and start working, and start a job, as an analyst on Wall Street or something like that. It's okay to take a little bit of time and see if there's something that you think that you can enjoy doing and enjoy it in a way that it positively impacts others for the rest of your life. And once you figure out what that is, there are so many educational paths that you can pursue, which at that point would give you not only the value of the education, but also provide you with the expertise to become a better X at whatever it is that you want to do. So, um, I didn't have this pressure, but some people do, where they are forced. I saw a cartoon today this Chinese father was walking into his teenage son's room and says, "Are you a doctor yet?" "No." "Speak to me when you're a doctor." You know,